Hello.
Hey.
Welcome. This is another episode of Biweeklycast. Today we are going to talk about planning, just on the tactical level. But before that, we have hosts that are you, Slava Rudnitsky.
And you are Dima Malenko. Before we jump into the topic, there is a follow-up in our notes.
Yeah, it's a bit of a follow-up. Last time we discussed, was it Udemy, right? The report about learning trends and whatnot. And at some point we discussed their surprisingly high valuation or something like that. And I went to Google for company valuation methods because I knew that there are like 5 well-established methods that are applied in different situations. And guess what? the first search result for that was a course on Udemy, which is called The Art of Company Valuation. I thought it was like really, really funny. But I didn't dive deeper into that. There are methods that are used in different situations, and in some situations, like when companies are valued, people would try and cross-check with different methods. But this is how it goes.
I can kind of get at why people see some magic and coincidences all over, because it happened to me with our next episode, which is going to be a book club with Chris Bailey book Hyperfocus, and then you pick another podcast, just a random episode of a random podcast for today. I listen to it, and just automatically my podcast agent or player or whatever suggests an episode with Chris Bailey right after that. So maybe it's either something very AI heavy that follows all our notes, or just a very tiny world of productivity.
Right. And then just I think that those coincidences are just funny coincidences. Very strange things can happen. Like in terms of coincidences, I'm sorry for derailing our conversation with that, but since we went into this topic, like literally yesterday, I was walking my dog in the morning, and then in the park, I saw a guy, I think he was going towards the tube station or something like that, and he had a very bright purple kind of package from the store called Liberty. It's a relatively famous store in the central London where they sell a whole bunch of antiques and like crafts and arts and stuff like that. And I was kind of attracted to like very purple package that he had in his hand, and he also did something with it. Like, okay, so far so good. But then in the office, in the end of the day, I saw one of my colleagues having exactly the same kind of packet, like purple, bright purple packet from the Liberty store. And I don't remember ever seeing packets from a Liberty store ever, almost, I guess, kind of, sort of. And I thought that was also funny coincidence, but I don't think it's a glitch in Matrix. I think it's just a coincidence, and I was
what was our favorite
thing.
bias there? Baader-Meinhof syndrome?
Yes, yep. Baader-Meinhof syndrome. I will link to that in the show notes. Cool. So then, why don't we get to the topic?
All right. So we did speak about planning in our first episode in this season, but it was more about the strategy. And the way I understand the notes, you would like to talk about tactical planning this time.
Yeah, like more of a tactical planning on a span of like days and weeks. And since like in the last episode, you said, how did you put it? We are lords of definitions or something like that. I think that's very
Andrew,
appropriate.
It wasn't me.
I think, well, maybe it was Andrew first, and then it stuck, I guess. So the
we
Lord
have
of
to spend some time there. That's true.
Lord of Definitions segment would be the way. Yes, indeed. I titled the episode "Tactical Planning," and my definition for tactical planning would be like the level of planning when sort of abstract projects, like projects with a specific goal and like set of items that need to be done, collide with day-to-day activities and have to be day-to-day realities and have to be intermingled for the project to be done. Does it make sense? Like in the like when you plan for a project, you would not plan for like dog walks, right? You plan the tasks that they deliver, the things that move project forward. But when you get to execute them, you kind of sort of have to account for a whole bunch of things like walking the dogs, having parents' evening in the school, like having to take your car to service. And this is kind of the level of planning I'd like us to explore now. That's
basically it's the dimension where your plans and ideas collide with real life, and the way you can foresee it or plan it or schedule it or organize it, prioritize it, etc.
Yeah. Put a structure around that, because you remember that in my big theme, the sub theme, or like the thing I'm trying to focus now is like to build a bit more structure that would allow me to address things that I felt unhappy about previously. And one of those things was kind of getting to do things in the very last moment, or not pushing some of the things forward which I thought were interesting or valuable. So I'm trying to figure out things to help me with that.
And you did link another podcast, it's focused episode named Social Dilemma. And as I was listening to it, I was kind of confused because there was a little section about planning there, about time boxing and calendars. But that was pretty much it. And then the guys swept into focusing and social media.
I should have been more clear about that. Yeah, I was referring specifically to that episode because that was so a bit in line with my current thinking about how to organize that process. But before we jump into that, I think there is this question we ask ourselves in notes, like why this topic, why is it important? I think I hopefully gave you and our listeners an idea of why this is important to me. I wonder if this is any interesting or it has any importance for you as well.
Well, that's what we've been discussing with some of my colleagues, because when we were planning and reorganizing our OKRs for another 6 months, one of our managers said, well, I don't actually see the connection between my daily activities. Like 9 out of 10 things are not really related to the objectives that we set. It's just some routines, habits, duties, other things that just pop up that were not planned or scheduled. And how to keep this balance of moving in the direction where you would like to move, doing things that you're supposed to do, reacting to things that just happen around you, and staying a person, like doing your routines, workouts, meeting friends, reading stuff, listening to stuff, and so on. I believe that it is very actual, especially considering my theme, the winter focus. I think it will be even spicier.
All right. Yeah, that's. I'm glad to hear that. And so, if we dive into the problem definition and possible solutions, I think like the way I look at the problem space is that there are multiple on this tactical level. There are multiple dimensions, kind of, which we have to deal with. One would be the natural dimension of time and events that have to take place at certain time. Like you have to be in certain place, do certain things at very particular time, and you have to account for that somehow and maybe plan things around that. Then we have like projects and tasks, like those ominous to-do lists, or which list what needs to be done, but then it looks for place and time to be done. And also there are things which I think it may be superfluous, but like needs that we have in the moment, like the phone rang, you have to answer, which may disrupt whatever is going on, or like something else happens right here, right now, which distracts you from both the pre-planned events and also even more so from tasks and to-do lists for the projects that you've planned. And combining all of the three, or finding an effective way of dealing with all of the three, I think is what I'm trying to figure out for myself.
Mm-hmm. And what do you mean by effective?
But that allows to move forward without. I guess the way, like, without kind of too much hassle, but I appreciate that the definition of effective, I guess, would be very, very subjective.
Right? Because, that's why I'm asking, because I believe that my definition of effective balance would be very different from yours. And
yeah, I think the specific thing I'm kind of struggling a little bit is the like time and events thing, where working in a big company with a rather big team, I'm not always in control of my own calendar, right? People would put stuff on my calendar, and some of the expectations to the role I'm in is that I would be there to kind of help, support, drive, provide direction, review designs and whatnot. So I kind of have to be there, and I feel like this part drives a lot more than I would love to, and I would kind of I'm trying to find ways to shift focus more into like projects and tasks, and making sure that things get done there and are not done in the last possible moment, kinda, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
How does it look like for?
I kind of accepted that meetings are going to be a huge part of my life, and let's say a quarter of them will be just incoming, so something that people invite me to attend or participate or present or do something. And that's like my life right now. I had this illusion that, there are meetings and then there is real work, and that they happen in some parallel worlds. But then my definition of effectiveness would be not very, but slightly different. I would say that here it's the amount of balance of tasks where you feel the progress. Like you can say that something significant has happened in the past month in terms of your work, while keeping a reasonable amount of time unscheduled. So something that you keep free for the incoming inspiration, creative works, or any other activities. So if these two criteria are met, then I believe it is effective. So you feel that you have achieved something in the past month, and your schedule is not fully packed with stuff.
Cool. Yep. That sounds good. It makes sense. Would it be fair to say that the word that we used a bunch of times already in previous episode, the word of intentionality, kind of plays a role here, so that you feel like you're, I guess, intentional with how you spend your time, accepting the limitations and injustices of the real world.
Yeah, and we'll talk about intentionality way more in our next episode, because I think it's going to be like the key thread of the book.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it resonates with me as well. And I guess this is where this whole topic kind of links to the time blocking method that was discussed in that podcast episode that I linked to. As I guess sort of independently, I arrived at a similar idea. I didn't realize that there is whole method to it, but I thought that, hey, I felt that the way I'm working can be described as I have work, like to-do lists, projects, and whatever stuff, in search of time in which that work could be done. And I thought that was the root of what gives me a bit of a kind of anxiety and unhappy feelings, because when the work which I consider important or like interesting or valuable is not able to find the time to be done in that time, I feel unhappy about that, about the fact that the work was not done, or if the time was not sufficient, that it was done kind of poorly or not to the highest standards I'm trying to hold myself to. And I thought that, hey, that there would be another, like the flip version of flip view of this model where there would be a time in search of work, so that I have, let's say, a block of time, and instead of like doing whatever the first thing comes to mind or something, continuing doing something that I was doing previously, I would kind of stop, and then, knowing that I have time, intentionally select what is the thing I'm going to do at that time. And this is what I'm roughly trying to get to, which I think is similar to this time blocks method.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And in terms of the tools, I assume you would have a calendar to visualize your regular appointments and meetings. You would have kind of a to-do list or task manager, I don't know, Jira, Trello, whatever, to keep your tasks somewhere.
Right.
And you might have something personal, like I would say another to-do list, not to mix things up, where you just keep track of some other stuff.
Yep. Yeah, that's roughly right. I have like actually, literally, like technically, I have 3 to-do lists. We will get to that, but that's right. I use OmniFocus to keep track of work-related projects. I have to-doist for all the non-work-related stuff to keep it completely separate. And I have calendar, and then I have reminders. But we probably, if we have time, we will get to that. That's not a biggie. Yep.
Do you consider, for example, themes journals or something else as a part of this planning system?
That's a good question. You got me thinking there. I guess maybe the answer that one may expect, that I would say yes, but technically, in all honesty, I don't think I heavily rely on theme journal or the theme itself for planning at this level.
And that what has changed for me when I started doing this decomposition of themes into weeks and months and stuff. They started generating actual tasks to my lists, which they never did before. Previously, it was the free time activity. Let's say I was doing the first yearly theme. It was Year of My Mind. And anytime I would have some leisure or free time, I would opt some activities that were related with researching how my mind works. But now it's a bit different, because now on a weekly basis, I can actually get tasks that help me move on.
Yeah, that's true. I think the theme and as such would play most important role for me in 2 situations, like in like very momentarily decision making kind of thing, and especially when with projects planning and that kind of a thing, where I would realize, this project or this task does not seem to be very well aligned with what I'm trying to achieve. What would be the way for me, like, let's say, not to do that, or do something different, or to do it a bit differently?
And that's actually even a question not just related to your personal activities, but also related to the projects. Because I believe that there should be also some space or place or tool or something to illustrate your goals, project goals, maybe company goals, perhaps. The priority system, like what's the prioritization for you, for your team, for your project, for your company? What are the most important things this month, let's say? How do you pick out of 2 very urgent tasks? Like, how do you define the importance? If you do analysis each and every time, it will be very frustrating.
I agree with you. That makes a lot of sense, and actually, this is what kind of happens. Probably we will jump, I guess, right now into that third to-do list. But the way I'm doing it now, we have this tradition of publishing like weekly updates on the things that we are going to be working, like what's the like top of mind type of a thing for the next week. And I use, like, when I write that post, to signal to people around me that, hey, this would be the things I'm going to focus on. This would be that moment where I would decide kind of sort of, maybe you can say, a theme for the week, but that would be unfair to the idea of a theme, because it can be 1, 2, 3, maybe sometimes even 4 distinct areas that I want to make progress in, which do not kind of fold into a single theme. It's just
you just highlight the tasks that you consider highest priority.
Right. Yep. That's right. And then this would be the first decisioning kind of step, and it will inform that day-to-day, momentarily decision making and help guide it. But also, after you mentioned minimalist thing that you are using in one of the previous episodes, I thought that I have unused space on my Apple Watch. Bear with me. I have ever since we discovered the focus modes feature almost at the same time with the episode of Cortex, I figured, let me take a step back. On Apple Watch, you can switch Apple Watch faces really easily. You just swipe and it changes. And even I use this to have a special dedicated Apple Watch face for the work time, for it to look different and highlight things that would be more important, like more relevant to work-related activities. And the way it was structured, I was always unhappy with how it looked like, because I wanted it to be like minimal, not to put stuff that I would have on my other watch faces. Like, for example, on my regular watch face, I would have sunrise and sunset time, because it's kind of relevant to like photography, and if I wanted to get out, that would be useful for planning and stuff like that. I definitely don't need that on the work watch face. So I had it differently, but every watch face that would have functionality that I wanted to have would also have space for something else. And I was not able, like for a long time, was not able to find a good use for that extra space. And it bugged me to no end, because the watch face, if that space was not used, the watch face looked like kind of like it's missing something. And I figured that what would be useful for me is to have sort of a focus thing for the day, kind of to be reminded of the thing I intended to work on or to focus on for that day. And the way I implemented this is I started, I never used Reminders app before, but I started using it for this thing. So I would create 1 or 2 to-do items or reminder items in the Reminder app and put the widget on my Apple Watch to remind me of those 1 or 2 items that I thought I should be focusing on this day. And I'm doing this for 2 weeks now, and I think it kind of works. It requires a bit of maintenance, just updating the way just how that app specifically works, but I think it helps me at least a little bit.
I think generally the idea of getting out of big scope of things, something that you really consider most impactful and something that will matter the most, is generally a very good exercise and activity to make such choices easier and easier next time. And especially when you feel swamped and overwhelmed with the number of tasks, just doing one most important stuff, one thing, like eat the frog, or what was the methodology there?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I like this metaphor, but yes, I think that people are saying that eat the frog, assuming that you do not like eating frogs, but just power through it.
And
if it's
I believe that your system right now with these reminders actually works. But once again, let's roll back to the, let's say, project goals. Like there are definitely some priorities, and they are not in the calendar. They are not in OmniFocus.
I guess that would be reflected in OmniFocus, so that the selection of projects for the week would roughly correspond to projects I have in OmniFocus, which would have like items to be done for those projects.
And how do you get those synced? I mean, do you have to go somewhere else to check what are the goals and priorities and then move them, or?
No, not really. I don't really think them. I just have them in my mind, I guess. And some of the things, some of the items in those projects in OmniFocus would have like due dates to signal that, hey, you'd better do it by this time. And there are different, they call them perspectives in OmniFocus, where you can select items that have either are the next item to be done in a particular project, or which items that have due dates and stuff like that. So I kind of use this feature to navigate what needs to be done next after I kind of chose that these would be the things I'm focusing on.
Mm-hmm. All right.
But it may sound a bit more like strict and rigid than it actually is. It's not like the way I'm describing it. It may sound as if there is a certain linearity to this process, but it's more of a kind of quick cycling through things, right? As we know.
Right. I was thinking about my case. Like in many situations, when I'm busy, let's say there are many things happening and some things are unplanned, I feel a lot of frustration at the end of the day when my to-do list is not done and I have to reschedule 3 or 4 tasks somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle such situations when like something happened and I don't know, a task took longer, or an unexpected meeting or an emergency occurred, and at the end of the day you haven't done what you planned?
Yeah, then I go into my office, close the door, and cry. I don't know, like that also gives me, like, frustrates me a lot, and I don't know. I don't think I have any specific method of dealing with that.
I don't think you need a method. I just wanted to feel that I'm a human, because when I was thinking about this tactical planning, I thought, I have a system. And then I realized that the system doesn't always work, because in many cases I don't have these emergency time boxes where I will do stuff that I didn't do yesterday. Like, it's really kind of offensive to put it into the calendar. Like, if I miss something, that's the time I'm going to catch up during the week. But I know that some people actually do that. They have this like catching up time box somewhere on Thursday or late Wednesday to be able to catch up with stuff that you didn't make for some reasons.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good thing. I think the bad effect, those kind of situations, which are very, I guess, unfortunately, very frequent, the unfortunate effect of them for me is, for the longest time, I was trying to establish a sort of a wind down procedure for a day for myself, so that I can say that I'm done for the day. That's it. I will now focus on focus, quote unquote, on some other stuff. Just that is to say, not to focus on, let's say, on work related stuff. And I was not successful with it. And the downside effect of this is that when something gets disrupted and I don't get things done on that day, I will still try to do them on that day. Like maybe I was thinking, let me maybe squeeze this half an hour to catch up on stuff before, I don't know, like I go to bed, or completely sign off work. And that's not great, because like in other situations, I'd rather use this time to plan the next day, or do something, or just relax and recharge for the next day. But because of that lingering feeling that, you didn't plan much for this day, and you didn't even manage to do what you planned, and trying to catch up really plays a very bad role.
I've had some moderate success here, and maybe it works. It will work for you as well. Who knows? Let's see. So, about a few months ago, I realized that I started working late hours to catch up with all the stuff because, well, I understood the system is not working. Like something is going wrong here because when you have to stay up late once, a few weeks, that could be okay. Twice, it's getting suspicious. 3 times a week, that's a system. It means something just has broken. And what really helped me here was an idea that I got from my colleague Anya Krasilnik. She mentioned that in many cases, if you have tasks that will block someone, it's usually more than enough just to write a short message about them. Like if something is not going okay, like let's say it's 7 p.m., I promised to do task X, and team A is waiting for this task X to move on. I could just write a message that, guys, sorry, I didn't manage to do it in time. I'm going to do it tomorrow in the afternoon, and you'll get your task X by 1 p.m. And usually that feels relieving, so I can actually close the apps, close the messengers. And then the second piece of advice that I actually got from you about 2 years ago, I guess, I have these modes on my MacBook where I can switch from work mode into personal mode, and there are no messengers and calendars and stuff there. It's just basically a browser for music and some things for friendly calls, but it's really hard to get to my work context from there. And so if I have some tasks that will block someone, I will just inform these people with a new deadline, explain why. I have a little template of this message, like explain the context, apologize, suggest the solution or the next steps. I go through this little template. I send the messages to people who I'm blocking. They know about this. And, so far, nobody has actually really complained. Most people just say, okay, thank you for the heads up. And they just do some other stuff because they're quite busy as well. And they don't have to wait for my activity. They can switch to something that productive that they can do. And it works. Like my laptop keeps working in the different mode, and there is just music, fun, and leisure. And this is the what was the procedure? Wind down, yeah? Or
wind down, yeah. I call it wind down.
So that's the thing. Like it's basically 7 p.m. All the modes switch, and it's time to get into the leisure, fun, and no work-related communication modes.
That's interesting. I think it's a very powerful idea that when dealing with other people and they expect certain inputs for their work, maybe just an update and being transparent on the state of the thing or like the current results so far, even if they are not complete, just being transparent about that and communicating that would be sufficient for them to keep moving forward and relieve the pressure from you for not delivering that thing, even if you have promised.
Moreover, it even evolved at a certain point. Let's say I got an unexpected meeting in the afternoon and I know that I'll have to sacrifice something. I don't have to wait till the evening to inform people. Like when I see that something is going wrong, I can already reprioritize tasks. So this is an extra hour that I lost. Probably this is the least impactful task. I will do it tomorrow or on Monday or on Tuesday or whenever my next free time slot is.
Right. And I guess many of the... at least some of the things that we've discussed and some of the other things that usually come up when you research this topic, even that time blocks thing. And I think we did not explain this to listeners, but the idea would be that in order to get stuff done, you would put this on the calendar. Like at this time, I'm working on this project or on this particular thing, and kind of force yourself to work on that at that scheduled time. And in that regard, I would have two interesting for me questions to explore. One would be that those methods, they require some sort of discipline, right? You have to stick to certain procedure for those things to work. And it may be relatively easy in sort of calm times when the pressure is not high and you're just cruising along the working days and stick to the process, you do the rituals and stuff like that. But then when pressure increases, it is very easy to kind of abandon those procedures and everything turns into chaos. So making these things work requires some sort of discipline. And I wonder what's your view, first of all, on this perspective, and how you ensure, do you get the discipline to follow the method that you established for yourself?
Let's start with the fact that I don't do time boxing these days. I do day boxing. So I have focus days that hopefully don't have any meetings. It's Tuesday and Thursday. And I do most of the deep work or hyper focus or whatever tasks you name on these days. But I don't know exactly when it's going to happen because my sleep schedule has been changing. And previously it was the morning time. Like I would wake up at 6, have my breakfast by 7, get all the stuff done, and 7:30, 8 latest, I would be already at my laptop and ready to work. But then I would finish quite early, so like 5 p.m. could be the end of my working day. Right now it's very different. Like I can barely wake up at 8, and then it takes me a few hours to get ready. So 10 is the time when I can actually come to the first meeting or start doing something. And in this regard, I think that one of the biggest challenges I face is not related to work. Like in terms of work, when you have a day for hyper-focus, you can choose what 2 things you would like to do, and you do it, and it's usually not a big deal. The issue happens with some personal activities. Let's say I have this set of texts for another Aspen meeting that I have to read. It's 100 pages about religion and civilization. And I don't do time boxing for personal stuff, and there is not much space for this, and I need more rest than I used to, and I can't get this thing happen. So my system doesn't work in terms of balancing the personal part. But in terms of doing the most important, crucial work-related activities, it's kind of helpful. But what's probably, I have an unfair advantage here that I can reschedule or cancel the meetings or ask people to delay them if they happen on Tuesday or Thursday.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think one of the things that you just mentioned, that you have focus like day blocks rather than time blocks, maybe an idea and an answer to the next question I wanted to explore is that even when I like with meetings involving people, it's kind of a norm for people to roughly come on time and for meeting to roughly end at its scheduled end or maybe sooner. I really love that about the culture that we have, that when there is no more things, there are no more things to discuss. We just say, all right, yeah, let's end here and get some time back. So it works kind of fine. But then when I tried to do those time blocks, I found that oftentimes, let's say I scheduled that after the meeting, and then I have a 2-hour window to do something, and I would schedule things. I often found myself in a situation that after that meeting, I cannot jump straight into that new activity. And if I schedule them right one after the other, I feel a bit of frustration that I'm not following the plan I set for myself. Like, what I'm doing wrong. And I thought that maybe the plan was wrong in the first place. But this general idea, when you plan for something in certain level of detail and then you deviate from that plan, that would be a situation which would give me a bit of frustration. And I wonder how, like, do you have the same thing, and how you deal with that?
Well, I think it's not a big problem for me because basically I have 3 sort of things in my calendar. It's scheduled meetings from my team, scheduled meeting from my clients, and my personal task that I place there for some reasons. Not very often, but if I do, I usually keep breaks between the tasks. So I wouldn't schedule working on a task right after the call. My internal rule is 30-minute breaks. So if I had a call for an hour, I would schedule something in 30 minutes that I do. For calls with the clients, there is a rule to have 15-minute break between the meetings. So Calendly cannot schedule something back-to-back with something that already exists in my calendar. So it doesn't happen there. And the only exception here is if some of my colleagues see like a free slot and they ask it for this time, and that sometimes happens, but not very often these days. So most likely people would ask just when is it convenient to talk, and I pick the time that works for me, or just send them the Calendly and say, like, please, could you use Calendly and set up this meeting?
Nice. Makes sense.
I've also heard from one of my friends that they have a rule of 60-minute meetings that actually go for 45 minutes. So you schedule 60 minutes, but you aim at finishing within 45 minutes. So you would have 15 minutes for the follow-up, some physical needs or something. So your calendar is still booked for this meeting, but basically it's like this wind-down activity after the meeting that you have to run.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So I would think, like, maybe as an organizer, you would plan for that. Since you are the organizer, you would be sort of held responsible for producing meeting minutes and stuff, and maybe publishing summary. But meeting attendees, they don't necessarily need to do that. So how do they do that? Do they include that in the? So do they schedule a meeting for the full hour, or do they schedule it for the 45 minutes plus another event for 15 minutes, and then they invite all the people for 45-minute event? Or they just say it will be 45 minutes? I think that's our internal part. Like, basically, we used to have the culture when people would try to use all the time they have within the call, and even more, and we're done with this, let's discuss something else. And I just remembered that there is X happening here, and we should also discuss that. It's not in the agenda, but let's go. It used to happen very frequently. But these days, we actually finished most of the meetings before the time ends. I have just one exception with one of my colleagues when we just don't meet any deadlines. But most of the other meetings, they finish earlier. And people do have time for the meeting notes or follow-ups or whatever they have to do afterwards. Interesting. Makes sense.
And what about you? Like, how are you going to change the status quo here?
I'm not sure yet. I think at least, I think that the bigger thing for me here would be to figure out like how not to feel bad about deviating from the schedule. I think it is useful for me to schedule that next block back to back with the previous stuff, not to give people a chance to squeeze something in there, because sometimes it can happen, and I'd rather not have that happen, but then kind of maybe change my mindset or attitude towards that, saying that, hey, if I plan to work, well, if I schedule a block of, let's say, 2 hours for this particular thing, let's be clear that it maybe will be an hour and a half of real work, and then half an hour, something like that, for just getting in the zone for working on this project, just wrap up the previous activity, set up, like align windows on the monitors to do that kind of stuff. And
that's exactly what we used to do with offline meetings. Like, you would schedule time for a meeting with travel time.
Yeah.
So why not use the same concept here? It's the travel time, but the digital travel time. Like, you would have to rearrange the space.
Digital travel time. If you were in the first episode, that would be the title of the episode, but you do not allow me to use things like that for titles.
That's why you made the subtitles, and you still write these sort of things.
Yes, that's why I made subtitles.
Cool. So I think that this concept of digital travel time could actually work. When you realize that if you have a 60-minute task, you just schedule 90 minutes, let's say, or 75, depending on how difficult it is.
Yeah, then I like this idea a lot. Digital travel time.
Yay. You see, we were happy that with this remote work, we got rid of commute.
I think that's the beauty of this entire thing, right? We discuss things, and as people say, when you try to explain your problem in the first place, you get better understanding and you get some of the answers already trying to articulate the problem. But then you get a whole bunch of useful and productive ideas from other people who are trying to solve similar or related problems and then try different things and have things to report. Awesome. But all this time, you kept me intrigued about your theme of focus. I felt like you have something to say about that, and maybe that would be the time to do that.
My theme of focus. No. Nothing special.
Okay. Everything is focused and sharp and like pinned up.
I've been getting a lot of satisfaction from my winter of focus, and specifically this month. Like, I can physically feel the difference. It's one of the few themes that worked. Like, from day to day, I can actually see that things are changing and my attitude is changing and stuff is changing. But I think we can discuss it more in the next episode, because it will be related to hyperfocus, and the book that you recommended strongly impacted my theme, and I got a lot of ideas from listening to it. And one of the topics that I will spoil is that there is a grid of distractions there, and what kind of things can distract us from being focused on stuff. And it kind of reminded me the article that you linked into our notes today about 2-minute rule from GTD. If you can do the task within 2 minutes, just do it when it came and let it go. And I disagree. I think it doesn't work.
Let's talk about that, because I also kind of sort of disagree with that idea. Let's explore. Why do you disagree with this?
I think that the examples that were mentioned in this article, and generally the idea that you can just answer the email and come back to the activity that you were doing, is wrong. Like, because you can't come back to the activity. That's basically switching your focus and attention from the thing you were doing, like reading a book, let's say. I was reading a book about marketing, thinking about something. There was a train of thoughts going into a direction. Right. And if I have an incoming email, I just won't open it until I finish the task, because if I do, then like it's done. If it happens in the break between the activities, I think it's okay. But in most cases, what I do is I have the communication slots or time when I think I will respond to all the incoming things within a day, like it's usually morning, afternoon, and evening. But then most of the things that need my reaction, I can just document them. I'll just send them in Trello and say, like, email from Dima, and forget and come back to read. If it somehow happens, let's say I have a call from you or something that already interrupted me, the shortest activity that I can do is come to Trello and create a ticket for it and close it. And then I can come back as fast as I can to the activity that I was doing. But it was still interrupted. So hopefully you can prevent it by notification settings or focus modes or something that doesn't allow these things to get through. I have an exception here because I work in the customer-facing side, and I have to be online in some messengers and activities that I can't mute because it's the response time, and it is crucial.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's super interesting, because when you started describing this thing, because I also think like this is kind of a rule that sounds like it makes sense in theory, but then when you try to actually follow it or like practice it, you run into a whole bunch of challenges with that. And when you started describing this, I was going to think, oh no, like that's going to be so boring, because you are thinking like the same things that I'm thinking, and it would not be interesting for our audience to listen to us agreeing to one another. But then what you describe is actually different from the idea I had about this rule. So your thinking is that this even 2-minute interruption is still an interruption, that it derails the activity you were working on. And I think, and then as you said, that maybe in the break or in between stuff, when you like sort through things, you can do those 2-minute things. That kind of makes sense. My pet peeve with that was that there are really not that many things that can be done in 2 minutes. And the examples, let's go through the examples they give in that article that I linked, and then see if like you would consider this to be a task that you do like right away. So they, towards the end of the article, they have this list which starts as put the coffee cup away. What kind
doesn't
of
seem
thing
like
is
a task. Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a task to me, but I can believe that this probably can be done in 2 minutes, right?
All right.
So maybe I can do that. Like text a loved one. This is where I start getting problems, but I would love to hear from you first.
I think it's impossible, because then you'll get a response and it will keep distracting you, and it will take 35 minutes.
Exactly. That would not be, if done properly, right? That would not be a 2-minute thing. That would be, it's not a text a loved one. It would be have a conversation with loved one, something like that. Yep. So it's no go for this one, right? And respond to an email. It's just
50-50. Like I would say that half of the emails I can respond within a 2-minute interval, especially if everything has been prepared. Like let's say I have to send a document. The document is sitting on my desktop and I just have to attach it and compose the text. That could work out. I'm quite good with emails, so I think I could do some of the tasks. If I have to find the document or create the document and send it, then no, like that wouldn't fit.
Interesting. You kind of changed my mind on this a little bit, because my initial reaction was like, no, like maybe that's because of the type of inquiries or email. I don't use email that much these days, but I treated email as just incoming request in this context, and maybe the nature of the requests or questions or things that I get are such that I'm rarely able to answer them in 2 minutes. It requires a bit of research and stuff like that. So I would not, like for me, this respond to an email would be a no-go for the 2-minute rule. But I can see that if this is a simpler thing where you can maybe reply yes or no or something.
It could be a document request, like to get access to the document, or it could be an invoice that I just have to forward to the accountants or somewhere else and move on.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So this is like 50-50 on this one. Then the next one is make your bed.
Easy. Like I can do that in 2 minutes. I just don't know how it is an incoming task during my work. But
yeah, same. Like you woke up, you do your morning routine, you maybe make your bed. That's fair. Then the next one, tidy your desk.
Doable but highly unlikely.
Same, and I think that would, for me, at least for me personally, that would fall in the category when I may want to tidy up my desk. Like I have this lens cleaning thingy on my desk because I was cleaning lens, like I guess several days ago. It would be nice to put it up, but sometimes I would just throw it somewhere so that it does not create distraction on my desk, but not really try not to go into the rabbit hole of figuring out what's the right place for this thing, because that can drive me, there is another thing that is misplaced. Let me fix that as well. And I can go down the rabbit hole. So I would not, even with tidying the desk, personally, I would not try to do that, because I know that can derail me for quite a time if I try to do that properly, and it would not be a 2-minute thing.
I'm really happy with my desk right now, because I actually have 2 cabinets. And one cabinet is for getting things from. Like there are pens and paper and notepads. Then there is a cabinet for putting things in. And then at the end of the week, I can just get all the stuff out there and rearrange it.
Yeah, that's smart. This is how technology helps us be more productive.
Actually, a minute of curiosity. What do we have here? There is a set of headphones. Then there is another set of headphones here. So there are
Very
two sets
useful,
of
just in
headphones.
case. Yeah.
There is a plug, and then there is another plug. So I feel like
makes sense.
Some religious leader who has everything in twos right now.
Right, like as they say, 2 is 1, 1 is none. Yep, it works.
Then there is a charger here, a box with candies.
Useful stuff.
Don't ask me how it got here. A set of pins.
Just if you need to pin something, yeah.
Yeah, you never know when you need to pin something.
Sure.
And a set of cards. I think you sent me those from London.
Yep.
Lovely ones. I keep getting them from one cabinet, use them, and then hide them here. So when I have time, I will put them where they belong.
Cool. Nice. Well, that's a great idea, like right there for keeping your desk nice and tidy. And you can do that in 2 minutes with 2...
But it's kind of like sweeping the dust under the carpet, you know?
Oh, but it works. Like if it serves the purpose of keeping your desk clean and keeping you free from distractions, like then why not? All right, we have three more items to go through. Compliment a colleague.
How is it an uncommon task? I mean, it's a good idea, but like, I was thinking about my business development team, and now I think I should send a compliment to my accountants. Just how is it triggered?
Maybe I think when you in the moment you went out of a meeting and you think that, hey, I should thank John for organizing it and running it very, very effectively. Instead of putting that in the to-do list, you would just do it right away.
I wouldn't do it right away. I'm not very good at text and emotional stuff, so I would rather say it. In order to say it, I have to put it into the to-do list. I have a special column in my Kanban thing. It's meeting points. And if there is something in common, I will just write it there. And then when I create an agenda for one-to-one or something, I will just remember that, that's what I need.
Makes sense. Yeah, I guess.
But if you're very good at it, and as long as it's not a voiced message, I think it's fine.
Good one. Book a doctor's appointment.
Like, totally impossible. I'm not a 2-minute task.
Right. I would agree with that. Even like if you have to phone them, that's like half an hour gone right there. Even if it's an online system, I think you would need to check availability, compare that to your calendar. So it almost becomes a project at that point. So I would definitely not try to do that in 2 minutes, because it would be a derailment. And the last one they have is read a company memo.
Technically possible to read, I think. If it's something actionable, like you would have to do something, follow the link, watch a video, or do something in this memo, that's becoming a problem because it creates another task for you that is longer than 2 minutes. So reading itself could be done, but I don't see the point.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because probably reading a memo would imply that you maybe need to change something about something, which would require more than just reading, and with that it would be more than just 2 minutes. Okay, so that 2-minute rule sounds nice, but maybe difficult to actually practice.
I can think of 2 activities that can be done in 2 minutes and are actually quite helpful.
Sure.
The first one, if you were working on one thing, let's say I was working on the marketing strategy, and in the process of work, I got an idea about something else. And this idea is just there, like it keeps rotating and I can't get rid of it. Or I think it's really useful and I don't have to forget it. I think 2 minutes is a very good time slot to come to Trello and create a ticket for it and write a short description and maybe link things that, like what I was thinking, maybe a photo from the text or something that inspired me to do that, to come back to this activity when there is time for whatever it was. And the other thing is to make a quick call if something is urgent and blocked, to agree on the next steps. Let's say there is a sales conflict, like something went terribly wrong, and for some reasons I see it in the chat, like something is going wrong, and I would like to stop my sales from answering. Like, please don't answer this message until we come up with a solution, or like use this protocol to deal with the situation. When I have to interfere into something critical, I could use the phone call, just whatever the person is doing, we'll see the call, answer the call, say what not to do or to do, and then, like, when the time comes, discuss the details.
Makes sense. I think I'd love to elaborate on your first point about putting the task in the to-do system that you're using. I think in many cases, using those 2 minutes to kind of craft the wording for the task such that it makes it easier to be done, like not an abstract like book doctor's appointment, like something more specific, like the name of clinic or whatever else that can help accomplish that, and you spend those 2 minutes kind of figuring out the best definition of task can be a good way to use and exercise this rule. And also I think many of the to-do applications would have this feature. OmniFocus has it. I think the to-dos that I'm using for personal stuff also uses that. You can have a hotkey or something that will bring up a quick box where you can type thing really quickly, hopefully with minimal distraction to what you are doing right now. And I use that quite a lot, especially in meetings, when I thought that, hey, it would be great to do that or follow up on that. I try to shoot those tasks in my to-do that way.
Another thing that kind of works for me in some cases is to make a screenshot. Like, if I see something that is useful or memorable, I can just screenshot it on the desktop, and then at the end of the day, when I just tidy things up, then I can see that, then like I was reading this book and that's what happened. But usually it's not very actionable. Cool. So are we pretty much done with all of the questions you wanted to go through?
I think so, and even more.
So if I asked you to highlight one key takeaway from our today's conversation, what would it be?
Difficult. I was not exactly keeping notes. I think what really resonated, well, like one of the things that really resonated with me was the idea that you have the focus days, which I think helps with, which achieves the purpose of kind of time blocking, but without the downsides that I described later on with scheduling specific time blocks and then sort of deviating from them. I thought that was very interesting, and I'm sure that there would be other things which I will catch and reiterate on.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. That you have the unfair advantage. You re-listen to the episodes, so.
Right? At least once. Yeah.
I think for me, one of the things that I can think of right now is the idea that for my personal activities, I would need a different system. Like, for, let's say, reading the texts. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure time boxing will help, but I will definitely have to think more like how to get such things happen. My system just doesn't cover those right now.
Cool. Yeah, I think it was a very interesting and productive and fruitful conversation. And I think throughout that thing, we already kind of were trying to sell the next episode where we are going to discuss the book called Hyper Focus by Chris Bailey.
The book was published in 2016, but I find it highly relevant. Like, things that are described in the first few chapters were really insightful, and I've already recommended it to a number of friends and colleagues. So Chris Bailey has been a discovery, and I'm really glad that you recommended this one because it was impactful for my team, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Yep, same here. So tune in 2 weeks
to hear hopefully good weeks.
Yep, good weeks.